This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, How to Attract Diverse Talent, Insights and Best Practices, hosted by Sia Partners. My name is Alana Kazihan, and I'm a Goodwill Ambassador for EWPN and part of their content team. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. This session is being recorded, so if you have to drop out earlier or you would like to forward this webinar to anyone, we will be providing you with a link via email within 24 to 48 hours, and we will be posting it also on the EWPN YouTube channel. During the presentations, you can always submit questions. You have a bubble in the chat bubble in the top right corner, and you may send your questions at any time during the presentation, and we will collect these and address them either throughout or also at the end in the Q&A session. During the presentation, all the participants are in listen-only mode. All right, and for those of you new to the European Women in Payments Network, EWPN is a network for women in fintech, cards, payments, banking, and financial services in Europe. Our events focus on bringing women in payments together to learn about issues and trends and network with peers and celebrate women's achievements from across the payments ecosystem. For more information, please visit our website, www.ewpn.eu. So next, I'd like to briefly introduce our hosts for today, Sia Partners. Sia Partners is a next generation management consulting firm and pioneer of Consulting 4.0. Sia Partners offer a unique blend of AI and design capabilities and augmenting traditional consulting to deliver superior value to their clients. They have a global footprint and an expertise in more than 30 sectors. And without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Arune of Sia Partners, who will moderate today's session. Welcome, Arune.
Great. Thank you, Alana. So really an honor to join forces together with you and other industry partners to make this webinar happening, because recently within Sia Partners, we signed our diversity charter and looked even deeper how companies can attract diverse talents, which resulted into a study of gender-biased wording in the job ads, which we are very willing to show and share with everybody. And in order to do that, we decided to go for a webinar format where we can show our insights. And for even more deeper knowledge on the topic, we invited partners together from the industry so they can share their experience and view on the same topic. So for this webinar, we joined forces with Diversity at Work, PaySafe, and of course you, European Women Payment Network. And we will share with you 3 presentations or 3 insights on the topic. Without further ado, I would like to introduce my colleague Stefan. So this is the partner that I just mentioned. So Diversity at Work, this is an initiative in the Netherlands, and PaySafe and together with us. For the next slide, I would like to introduce my colleague Stefan Twicht, who is within Sia Partners an ambassador in the Netherlands for diversity and inclusion. He is very active in the topic, and actually he was the one who led and created the study of gender-biased job ads, which I think is very original and interesting way to look into how biased recruitment process actually is, but Stefan will explain all about it in his presentation. He's based in Rotterdam, the Netherlands, working for Sia Partners, and holds an economic and law degree. And yeah, I give floor to you, Stefan.
Thank you, Aaron. I hope everybody can hear me properly. Otherwise, please indicate that in the chat. Well, thank you for the introduction, Aaron. Yeah. So let's start with the research that we've done at Sia Partners. So as Aaron told you, I'm responsible for this research, and I'm the lead in diversity in the Dutch office. And today I will introduce you to the topic of a gender-coded language in job ads. So before we start, this question to everybody, and you can reply in the chat if so. Have you ever found a job that you thought was the job for you, but after reading it, you felt it was not for you, nor that you belonged at the company? Just give you a short minute to think about this question.
I see many times.
I see someone else also indicating that. So what might have influenced that? Gender-coded language might have been an influence on that. So what is this now exactly? So we might not all be aware, but when we talk, when we write, speak, communicate, we subtly use gender-coded language that might be biased consciously or unconsciously, and this has an effect on people and how they perceive this way of communicating. So gender-coded language can be divided in two categories. That's agentic or masculine coded language, or communal or feminine coded language. Now, agentic masculine coded language is more focused on the individual, associated with masculine environments, and communal feminine coded is more focused on the community. So we see a couple of studies that have done this, and all these studies show that when you use gender-coded language in your job ad to describe this function, that can have a significant effect on your application pool. So without knowing it, writing a job ad, posting it, that might affect already how much of diverse talent is applying for your company. So what the studies show is that if a job ad contains mainly masculine coded words, that has an impact on the female applicants. So it's less appealing to them, and they have less of a sense of feeling of belongingness. Now, this may not only be on female applicants, but also feminine applicants. And do notice, when we talk about masculine and feminine, females can also be masculine in characteristics, and men can also be feminine in characteristics. Now, when a job ad contains mainly feminine coded language or is written gender neutral, the studies show that there is an evenly appealing to females and males. So they both apply to the job evenly, leading to more gender diversity on the workforce. What's the difference between these words? So when we look at masculine coded language, that is associated with a masculine environment, mainly aimed at personality traits, also known as agentic words, and focused on the individual mindset. So that might result in less cultural and gender diverse applicants. Examples of these words are result-driven, individualistic, and competitive. On the other side, we have feminine coded language, and that is more associated with a diverse environment. It's aimed at behavior and community. There are communal words, and it leads to more diverse applicants for the job. Words here are, for instance, collaborate, responsible, and trust. You might already see that difference in these wordings. Masculine coded words can also be more perceived as harder words, mainly on yourself. You are competitive against others, whereas the feminine words are more perceived as the we feeling, us as a community. Now, this not only has an effect on gender, but it might also have an effect on cultural applicants, as for instance, words as individualistic have a different meaning in the Western cultures compared to Asian cultures, where they also tend to be more communal. So,
could you give an example of such a words?
well, we have the words here: result-driven, individualistic, competitive. Those are more masculine oriented. And feminine words, we have collaborative, responsible, trust, together. And you can also rewrite this. So for instance, if you have masculine coded language, such as you are result driven in job ad, you can rewrite that to you are able to achieve results. That gives a whole different feeling to the requirement for some people. So this is all part of the employee life cycle. And today we are more into the attract and recruit phase, where we're talking about today. But during the whole employee life cycle, you can find that gender language has an impact. How you communicate internally on your intranet with your employees, that can impact their engagement and performance. They feel less belonging in the company. And it's only one part of the bias spectrum, because there are a lot of biases that can arise during an employee's life cycle that impact the employee's choice. So to focus on our study, so we built a gender-coded language tracker bot, and this bot analyzed job ads in the Netherlands based on all the social research that has been done. And we looked at 18 different industries, looked at more than 350 companies and almost 14,000 job ads in the Netherlands, with 150 gender-coded words behind that. So all this information we compiled, we run this on the website Indeed to scrape all these job ads and look at how is the communication in this, and that has been normalized to ensure comparison amongst industries and companies. Now, what did we find in that study? So let's first look at the feminine industries. We found a top 5 of feminine coded industries with job ads. This doesn't mean that they only write feminine coded language. They are more oriented on feminine language, but they also use masculine language. And what we found was that the hotels and leisure was the most feminine oriented industry, followed by the telecom industry, technology, pharmaceuticals, and fashion. Then we also looked at what are the words that are mostly used in these job ads, and those were the following top 5: being responsible or have a responsibility, responsible role, being enthusiastic, open, supportive or support, and collaborate. Now on the other side, we also looked at top 5 masculine coded industries, and there we found the industrial industry as one of the biggest ones in the masculine oriented job ads: automotive, general insurance, health insurance, and accountancy. You see that there's a bit more focus also on the financial industries here. Words that were mainly found there were large, quick, direct, challenge, and technical. Now there's a difference between culture. In the Netherlands, large and quick are more associated with masculine traits, but in English these are other words such as the. So we did this study twice. First we did this in January 2020, and then we repeated it after COVID hit to see if would there be an impact in what we're looking for in the market. If companies are more aware, because we also had conversations based on our first study. How are you perceiving your job ads with companies? And what we found was that actually compared within 1 year, we found that there was a shift. First, we had mainly of these 18 industries were masculine oriented, but after more than half a year, these were more focused to feminine oriented. So we have 2 explanations for that. The first one is what we found were that organizations, also due to the conversations that we had, they were aware of this need to diversify. So Black Lives Matter situation sparked a debate on diversity and inclusion, and companies became more aware of what it is and how they communicate. So Most of them consciously looked at that. Indeed, I see Anna Bay asking a question. Interesting that technology is included as industries with feminine coded jobs. Can it be because they are now trying to attract more women? Yes, this is indeed one of the explanations for it. They become more aware also on how to communicate. And you also see, for instance, in the Netherlands, if you look at graduations, also in tech universities, there's an increase in women graduating from tech universities. IT companies are now also aware to be competitive against each other to attract the right talent. Another explanation is that due to Corona hitting, we see that responsibility, care, and compassion are skills that are now needed in leadership. We see a shift in leadership going from the more hierarchical leadership to the more supporting leadership. And also during Corona, when people were lower in engagement, working from home, leadership needed to stand up, show care, responsibility, and compassion to engage their workforce while we're working remotely. So here's an example of what we built, how this bot looks. So in the Netherlands, we built this company culture monitor, where we look at industries, companies, job ads, and coded words. And you can compare industries and countries with each other. Here you see an example of the UK market with a company Revolut. And you can see how it fares against the other industries, where we use exclusive and inclusive here instead of masculine and feminine, because we look at more than only gender-coded wordings. We're also working on looking at internal communications within companies. And the bot also gives insights. So we track the job ads. And here you see what happens when we track a job ad. It clearly indicates which words are masculine and which words are feminine. We are looking, I see Anna B asking another question, analyzing whether the job ads were from an executive position or not. We are looking into this, so we are trying to look at how can we also filter these executive positions. We haven't done that in our original study, but in our next study, we will look into those. See if there's a difference between someone on a higher senior position and a junior position. But in this bot, that is one of the options that we are building on. Now, to conclude my talk, I've now been talking about gender-coded language, but there's far more than that, and Hussein will go into that in his conversation. But inclusive language goes beyond gender and job ads if you want to have and maintain your diverse workforce. It's nice to attract diverse talent, but maintaining them, keeping them, and having them in your company is of equally importance or even more important. So also be aware if you communicate, that if you communicate internally, that also affects a sense of belonging of the current workforce and can therefore influence your retention rate. Next, if you use subtle words such as digital savvy, young workforce, what you see that most companies are now also promoting, we are a digital savvy company, tech-based, that might impact the sense of belonging of older generations as they feel left out. And lastly, it's also about talking, do you want people to fit in your company or belong? Because there's a difference. When we talk about fitting in, we actually say you need to adjust to our company. Instead of that, we say you belong in our company. We're looking for someone who belongs here. That gives a different aspect to that. And on that note, I would like to conclude my talk and give the floor back to Arun.
Thank you, Stefan. Just to mention that we did that the same study previous year. We did it this year, and we are planning to continue looking into this data and see how it changed in the industry during that time, because I think also it's nice to see how it evolves. Thank you, Stefan, a lot for your presentation. If anybody have questions for Stefan, or please feel free to put it in the chat. We can address them after other presentations. Now I would like to introduce our next presenter for today, Hussein Adam Dia. Hussein is a policy officer at Diversity at Work, an initiative of the Social and Economic Council of the Netherlands, the highest advisory body of the Dutch government on key social economic issues, in which employers, employees, and independent experts work together to reach agreement and advice. I think it's a great initiative coming from the Netherlands. He holds a master's degree in political science, which he obtained in Leiden University after studying for some time in Berlin as well. Hussein was born and raised in Germany. However, his parents immigrated as Lebanese refugees to Germany some time ago. And yeah, Hussein, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Arun. Can everybody hear me?
I can hear you. So
Okay, perfect. Then thanks. Thank you very much. I just wanted to say also thanks for the kind introduction. And before I dive into the topic, I just wanted to say one or two sentences about the Dutch Diversity Charter, because it is part of the Social and Economic Council, and which may be interesting and also good questions to ask to yourselves. Is there a diversity charter in my country? Because the Dutch Diversity Charter is part of a network of European diversity charters, and except of the United Kingdom and 2 or 3 countries in Eastern Europe, in each European country there is a diversity charter. So this might be also a point to turn to if you as a company anywhere in Europe might need some advice to foster diversity policies. I want to dive in the topic directly with our monitor, because as Stefan has said, we advise and help companies and public employers to draw up diversity policies, and each year we do an evaluation. And I just took some figures out of the monitor about human resources policies. And what you see is that the big majority of charter signatories is applying policies like adjust job advertisements, recruitment channels, but also, and that's I think also the most important thing if you want to attract female talent, also update their policies in-house. For example, trainings for recruiters, implement targets, also quantitative targets in the sense of numbers, and adjust processes and other policies, organizational policies like harassment policies and these things. I will turn to them in a bit. So you can see that many employers first and foremost focus on job advertisements and recruitment channels. So that's why I also want to start. I think Stefan has presented in a really good way how important the use of gender neutral language is, but also how important it is to refer not to character traits, but to what do we expect of somebody in the sense of tasks. And we see also with signatories that kind of irrelevant competencies such as do you have a driver's license, or some social activities are quite irrelevant for the task you are asked to do. So we gathered that to avoid these competencies is better in the sense of attracting talent from diversity groups. Which is also quite important, we gathered, is that mention in a transparent way employment conditions, and not only the standard conditions, but also what are the career opportunities, what are learning and development opportunities that that the employer offers. This is research shows, especially for young people, and as such also for young women, quite important. And also, what are the salary levels? A bit more transparency in the sense of the salaries. And I want to, as it comes to job vacancies, I want to refer to one of our best practices from the Charter Network. PwC does in every job vacancy, they have a small text where they promote diversity and inclusion, in the sense that they encourage people or candidates from diversity groups that that they apply to the vacant function, because they want to be a diverse workforce. And I gather that you all get the presentations afterwards, so I implemented some hyperlinks, and when you click on the link, you see the dark blue link, you will get to the text I was referring to. So this is on the field of job vacancies, some tips. When it comes to recruitment channels, sorry, I also say challenges, recruitment challenge, it is important to keep in mind that diversity groups are quite effectively reached by their own peer groups. So women are reached by women networks, such as a network where we're today, what today hosts the webinar. But also when it comes to other networks, for example, LGBT networks, you have Workplace Pride, which is based in the Netherlands, but an international network. And many diversity groups, that's what we also gathered, turn to these networks, multicultural networks also included, if it comes to where are good job vacancies, etc. Which showed to be quite valuable is the engagement of employee resource groups. And IBM Netherlands used their female or the women employee resource groups to get more in touch with women in their network, or in the network of the women of the female employees, because especially in the field of IT, the competition is high for brain, let's say, and that's why IBM turned to its own women employee resource group, which is also interesting, was one of the charter signatories, Computer Futures. They are an executive search bureau for IT jobs, and they started as part of their commitment to the diversity charter. They started a Diamonds team, where they also help other companies, such as like Sia Partner does with their research. They help other companies to find suitable candidates for IT functions. In that sense, the candidates were female. What I said in the beginning, not only job advertisements and recruitment challenge seem to be crucial, but especially the organizational policies showed to be really important, especially for women. So we always advise to designate a confidential advisor, or at least a fixed point for diversity and inclusion questions, and to implement explicit arrangements about harassing, gender equality, and also salary discrimination. And at least the first and the third suggestion is also really important for the workforce in general. So these are things each company should do in the interest of all employees. Which is then also important, is that the top level promotes these policies, not only implement them, but promote the policy, so that it's less likely that complaints will be ignored or not listened to in a sense of way. The Social and Economic Council is also the house of the employees' participation. So when it comes to organizational policies, involve the Works Council, because in the most of the European countries you have laws for it, and in each Western European country at least you have laws for it. And based on these laws you can make policies for good working conditions, for equal pay, for diversity policies, even for ecological sustainability. So involve the Works Council in your policies, because they are a really strategic and also powerful partner in these policies. One charter signatory, APG, it's an employer's pension provider, conducted an inquiry about gender pay gap, and it was also quite fruitful, because they identified that 125 women received too few, a salary which wasn't justified. So they got an increase of salary, and some women even up to 10%. So this is also one big step APG took, and which is really in the sense of being self-critical and adjust your policies, a big step. So I wanted to emphasize that. When it comes to the selection process, we always advise to diverse the selection committees, and not only including women, but also from other groups, people with a disability, with a migration background, LGBT people, old and young people, so that the the selection process is as objective as it could be. Research indicates from Harvard from the Harvard School of Economics that short interviews with single members, instead of like one candidate is meeting a full committee, are more likely to lead to diversity among the hired candidates. So this is also something to keep in mind. Aside of structure the interviews, make them as objective as you can, that not your belly feeling or your gut feeling is deciding, but an objective protocol that the interview is followed. We also advise to take measures to prevent biased applications in the sense of application processes, and there companies have also instruments of, I always call it manipulation, to objectify the process. And one of the things is the Rooney Rule. The person which is named, this instrument is named of, was an American football player. And according to the rule, a company always invite at least one candidate from a diversity group. And the Art Museum The Hague implemented this rule for migration background. So at each, like one of three out of three candidates who was invited had a migration background. And Shell did this the same rule, like 1 out of 3 has to be older than 55 years. So they wanted a higher inflow of more experienced or more aged employees. So this rule is really catchy and can objectify the selection or application process, which is as important as the organizational policies about harassment and gender equality are specific facilities for women and men. Because when you talk about flexible working policies, family-friendly policies, well-being initiatives at the workplace, these are mostly important for women. Research indicates that 87% of women appreciate flexible working policies. 82% of women appreciate family-friendly policies, and 72% of the women appreciate well-being initiatives at the workplace. However, if we talk about family-friendly policies, it's also when a woman, for example, wants to work more, it's also important that the men have the possibility to benefit from these policies. So this is, I think, always important to emphasize for women and men. Implement promotion programs for women, especially to have a higher promotion or a higher percentage of women at the top. KPN, a big telecommunication company in the Netherlands, has implemented the so-called FEM analyzer, and by this instrument, they wanted to fight the glass ceiling, which were the third and the fourth highest salary scales appear to be. So by this FEM analyzer, they identified women who have the potential to get to the top. So this is really important, and especially when you talk about positions or jobs in IT, tech, science, engineering, and these things, there are companies which give women a so-called pole position. So in the sense of that women don't start in a worse condition as men, in the sense of reskilling, they get better access to these reskilling programs. In the end, I just want to talk about monitoring, because this is also a key thing when it comes to diversity policies. And PageGroup had a problem with female employees which left the company quite often shortly after their pregnancy. So PageGroup did service in the company and asked also how, because they felt that women also have to ask the questions themselves: how does pregnancy affect my promotions? I mean, this is not a question men do ask themselves. So they started to ask questions, especially their female colleagues, about care responsibilities and maternity leave. And after that, they discovered that women felt kind of alienated during the pregnancy. So the landing after the pregnancy was quite hard. So that's why they adjusted their return policies to make a soft landing. But also, and this is, I think, also quite important, after they started with posing these questions, they also start to update their part-time policies, and also discovered that part-time working didn't affect the productivity of the company. In the opposite, it increased the productivity, because the employee satisfaction was higher, and by that, the support also from their male colleagues was even bigger to make part-time policies. So measuring is key in this sense. And if you want to know a bit more about that, you can ask, or you can look to this document, or also to this best practice guide when it comes to STEM professionals. Thanks.
Great, Hussein. Thank you for your presentation. I think it's a great checklist for all the companies to go through what you were mentioning. And just like I mentioned that we signed a diversity charter within Sia Partners, and that worked as a great escalation or awareness for the top management of how important the topic is. So I think it's a great initiative, but and a lot of things to be checked for and improved in the due course. For everybody, if you have questions, don't hesitate to put them in the chat. And I would like to move for our last presenter, Marco. So it will be the most practical, I think, presentation that you will hear today, because Marco is really hands-on on the topic. So Marco is a triathlete, a proud father of one teenage daughter, Isabella. He plays guitar and has been working in the field of human resources for more than 20 years now. And his focus is on talent acquisition particularly. On average, he contacts approximately 1,800 candidates per year, which is quite impressive number, I must say. Besides the corporate career, Marco is also an university lecturer in the field of human resources management. He's originally from Brazil. Now he's based in Vienna and lives there for 11 years now. He's the recruitment manager for the DACH region at the PaySafe Group, a private equity investment fintech in the sector of online payments with more than 3,000 employees worldwide. I think Marco has plenty of insights to share with all of us, looking at the number of candidates he sees every year. So I give floor to you, Marco, and we stop the presentation so you can turn on your camera.
Very good. Thank you very much, Ernie. I just want to make sure that you have my audio at your side. It's all working?
Yes, I do hear you. So must work for others as well.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. I'm very glad for being here and also for having this chance to share a little bit more of my opinion and also a little bit of my experiences on the topic diversity and inclusion. I will share with all of you some of the cases that we are dealing on a daily basis in terms of diversity and inclusion. But before giving a little bit of the practical experiences, I just want to say maybe 2 or 3 thoughts on the topic diversity. First of all, I think that the topic diversity is in a very constant evolution, and thanks God we're moving in that direction. If you remember from the past, diversity and inclusion was quite restricted to the topic gender, and that's it, men and women. And nowadays, I guess, when we are talking about diversity inclusion, we have a much large list of topics that we can consider and we should consider when we are discussing diversity and inclusion. We are talking about religion, we are talking about sexual orientation, we are talking about family structure, we are talking also about life experiences, and all of these things are in somehow contributing for the topic diversity and inclusion within the companies. I like to say that there is an economic perspective on the topic diversity inclusion, meaning it has been proven that companies with a high level of diversity and inclusion, they are performing better than the other ones. This is the economic perspective on the topic. But there is another one which I think is much more important, which is about our society outside. It's more an existential perspective. Our market, our society is diverse outside, and makes no sense for not having diversity within the companies. When we are talking about bringing diversity into the hiring process, I think that one very powerful element that all of us we need to be aware of it, that usually is playing against diversity in a very unconscious way, is the way that our brain is working. Our brain will do as much as possible to keep us surrounded by people like us, people who has the same type of experiences that we have in the past, people who are thinking like us, just to prevent us from potential conflicts in the near future. And this is happening, believe me, with every single person involved in a hiring process. The way that I like to deal with this situation, first of all, is I am the person responsible for recruitment management, but I am never ever running a hiring process alone myself. Try to create always a group of people who can join the hiring process, running the interviews, because first of all, it has zero cost doing this. And second, you will realize immediately that you can have a different perspective on the candidates just by the fact that you're adding a little bit more people to join you. Second topic is speak out and speak loud as much as possible that your company is really open to diversity, in the sense that you can use disclaimers to make that, you can support causes on your society or in the place near to the company, in the sense that you really show to the people outside that your company is dealing with diversity in a very natural way. Let me double check here if nothing is missing from my side. Diversity, there is always I like to say that there is a two-way street in that sense, because if from one side we as a company we have to speak out and to speak loud outside that we are fostering and supporting diversity, it's also important to make sure during the hiring process that the candidate that you are about to welcome in your company, if this candidate is also used or open enough to work in a diverse working environment. And this is something that sometimes we have to speak very clearly when we have different, for example, different religion orientations in the team, that you tell to the candidate, are you comfortable in joining our company where you see a lot of people with different backgrounds, with different religious beliefs, and are you open to join this group as well and to add more diversity and inclusion into the team? I think that this type of conversation is very important to have, not only from the company side, but also to understand if the candidates are really prepared also to join a very diverse working environment. I like also to say that maybe as a company you cannot change the world at once, but you can really start to do something for your community or for the community where your business is operating. In somehow this is going to create awareness. I think that this is something very, very important and valid also in terms of businesses. In our case, for the PaySafe group, we live diversity and inclusion on a daily basis. We have more than 29 nationalities working together under the same roof. We have young people, we have senior people working with us, we have people with different life experiences. And when I'm talking about life experiences, I think that this is also a topic that is nice to open a little bit more. What do I mean about life experiences? Meaning, is someone who is part of a small family or someone coming from a big family? Is someone coming from a patchwork family? Is someone who fought a disease in the past? Is someone who lost a child in the past? Is someone who moved country to start a new life in a different place? And all of these topics are so rich in terms of experience that you can add to the company. And the reflex of having that type of diversity and inclusion, in my opinion, you can clearly see in the decision-making process. For example, when you have a candidate in front of you and you have a kind of a small hiring team debriefing on the candidate, the quality of the observations, the challenging that we are doing to each other regarding to the interview of this candidate are absolutely much more interesting, and also open our eyes in a very different way. And I'm very glad actually that we have this freedom to act in our company nowadays. As I said, I'm I love what I do. It's not easy to meet and talk with, on average, almost 2,000 candidates per year, which gives me also a very good understanding in terms of what we can add to our company in terms of diversity and inclusion. And just to make sure that we are going to keep us on time, I have one example about a situation from the past where we had a candidate. The candidate was applying for a management position. One of the benefits was a company car, and I remember that he was saying, due to my religion or orientation, we don't have any type of contraceptive. I am going now for the kid number 13, and the company car must be a kind of a van or SUV where I can bring kids on a different
bus.
almost a bus. And it was a completely topic of discussion at that time in the company, because all the limitations that you had in the policy was, of course, not in that direction. But gladly, the family structure was absolutely not a topic to make a decision for the candidate. And they said, you are the right candidate, you are the candidate that we want to have, and we are going to do the best or as much as possible to accommodate your needs. And they said yes for the candidate. The candidates say yes to the company, and they could solve the situation in that sense. And these small things that are impacting the decision-making process in the companies. And I'm also glad to see that IBM was mentioned again in this webinar, because in the 90s, I remember having a conversation with IBM in Brazil, in São Paulo. And at that time, also without having any strong support from technology, the IBM has started to put together groups of people with different lives, with different life experiences, to chat or to communicate during the working day, to share their experiences and to make them feel that they are not isolated part of a very, in order to not make them feel alone, they were putting together as a group and say, this is a group that we have LGBTs, this is the group where we have single moms, single father, and just to make them share a little bit of their experiences together and make them feel comfortable in the working environment. And maybe telling you this today at the year 2020, maybe it's normal or should be like this, but I'm talking about the 90s, which the topic diversity and inclusion was not that evolved as it is today. And I'm really, really glad to see that IBM has been mentioned again. These are my final words to you, and thank you very much for having this opportunity to share a little bit more what we have been doing and how we have been thinking here at PaySafe Group. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marco. Good insights, and I hope that everybody will strive for diversity. We still have 5 minutes to go. If anybody have any questions or would like to share a thought or suggestions, ideas, please speak up or write it in the chat. I think that for me, it was very interesting to hear different angles of diversity, and indeed, it doesn't end only with the male, female. It can be interpreted in many different ways. So that's fun to see, and I think it's just starting, and it will evolve further. I don't see any questions popping up. The presentation is recorded, so I think we will share it on different sites and channels, so feel free to forward it. And Alana, back to you then.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Aruna, Stefan, Hussein, and Marco, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. very insightful, very interesting information based on research, experience, and observations. So today's webinar, how to attract diverse talent and insights and best practices. If you have any other questions, you can contact any of the panelists directly via LinkedIn or on the contacts they provide with their presentations after this session. Or you can also contact the EWPN content team via email at content@ewpn.eu. Once you leave today's webinar, you will receive an email within 24 to 48 hours with a link to view today's recording. Our next session will take place on the 26th of November, and the topic is the undetected signs of modern slavery in financial services. And it will be hosted by EWPN and Red Compass. And you can already register for this event by following a link on the upcoming events list on the EWPN website. On behalf of EWPN, thank you for joining us today and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.